Greetings, welcome to Hartman-Baldwin's webinar series. This evening we're going to cover design development, the art of interior design. And it's really what most people find, or many people find, to be the most interesting and really exciting part of what we do, creating those beautiful interiors that you see in our projects. But you know, some people find this aspect of what we do to be totally intimidating too. And there's just so much out there to choose from, so many options, and how do you get through that? So that's what we want to talk about tonight. And I think if there's a key, and I'm going to talk about this more, we're all going to talk about this more later, but the focus is putting it on you. It's about how you live and how you want to live. And it's not about trends or what's happening on TV or anything else. It's about you, our client. So let me start by spending a little bit of time talking about who we are and what we do. But before I do that, I invite you to get comfortable, maybe sit down in your favorite chair, grab a drink or some snacks. We're going to keep this pretty short, maybe about half an hour, and we're going to leave some time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. But I thought I'd say a little bit about why we do these webinars. You know, from the very beginning, Hartman-Baldwin has tried to educate our community by talking about aspects of the remodeling business and how we can maybe help people to have a better experience, whether they work with us or not. And so it's been something we've been doing for a long time. In these pandemic times with COVID, we were looking for another way to reach out to people and get in front of people. And so we started these webinars. They've been really successful. And one of the things that's been successful about it is we can pick a particular topic and go into a little bit more depth on that. And it gives us tools to show some things that we might not be able to do otherwise. So I hope you are able to enjoy the seminar tonight or the webinar. If you are interested in other aspects of what we do, we have produced quite a few of those, and they're available to view on our YouTube channel. So go check that out. And welcome back to those of you. I've had people tell me I've been watching all of them, and sometimes people have told me I've watched them multiple times. So welcome back to all of you. And then just a little bit about Hartman-Baldwin too. So for 35 years, we've been a fully integrated design build firm. And by fully integrated, what I'm saying is that we're architects as well as general contractors, all under one roof. We're working together to make sure that what we're designing is going to be what we're building and pulling all those things together. So really, collaboration has been in our DNA, kind of in our blood from the very beginning. And in the same way that we're collaborating together in terms of the design and the construction, the architecture and the construction, interior design is part of that collaborative effort. So it's not as if there's a point in our process where it's like, hey, now we're done with the design, we're handing it off to our construction team and maybe you bring an interior designer. It's all one entity working together from the very beginning. And in that collaboration, I think what's so exciting about how we work is that it's with our clients as well. So if we're working together, you're able to be very, very much a part of that process, which again is just so rewarding and exciting and is the reason we have these results we do. So let me introduce you to some of our people that are going to be with me tonight. So we have Becca Craig, one of our talented interior designers.
Thanks for joining us.
And Miranda Snap, also a very talented interior designer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Nice to see, well, can't see you, but thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Miranda points out a good point. It is difficult to have that connection with our audience that we treasure so much in our day-to-day lives with our clients, but we're doing our best here. So my name's Jesse Emmerd, and we have some people that are going to be working behind the scenes with us too. So if you hear me ask Danielle to change a slide, that's Danielle's kind of working here behind the scenes. And then we have some other folks that are all part of our Hartman-Baldwin team that will be answering questions for you. So if you do have a question that is kind of specific to something that you want to know about, or general, use the Q&A tab that Zoom provides. I think that's a little bit more effective than the chat. And one of our panelists will answer that question, or if we feel like maybe it's something that we want to talk about at the end, we're going to save some time at the end of our presentation for some questions and answers as well. So looking forward to hearing what everybody's thinking and what questions they have. So a really important part of what we do is we have this process, okay? And so you can see up here, we have pre-design, conceptual design, design development, and construction. And that's what we call our design build process. And I'm just gonna briefly describe what those entail. So pre-design is really just kind of getting to know one another, understanding your project, seeing if it's a good fit, and then deciding if we're gonna work together. Conceptual design is really figuring out the big picture. It's better understanding of your project and working within the parameters of your project and your budget to come up with something that we can say, hey, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna work on this piece of this project. At that point, then we move into a phase of design we call design development. And you can see in the font that's bold. The reason is that's what we're focusing on tonight. And we're gonna focus on one aspect of that design development, which is that interior design aspect. Now, the final phase, I shouldn't say the final phase because we treasure the relationships we build with our clients, and oftentimes we have clients that will return to us for many different phases. But in this 4-stage process, construction is execution to plan. So let's talk a little bit more about design development. So you can see that design development includes the interior design, which is material selections, colors, textures, bringing all that palette together and everything that goes into that. But it also means creating the working drawings. So since we're going to be talking more about the interior design portion, I'm just going to briefly mention what the working drawings are and how that works into this process. So at the end of conceptual design, we've decided here's what we're going to do. Well, we still need to finish those drawings. We need to do some engineering oftentimes. We need to apply for permits. We've already done some research, so we know that what we're planning can be done, but we need to get into some more of those details and produce those drawings that we could submit. We also want to make sure that we're getting a cost that we are 100% able to guarantee and stand behind. But in the meantime, we have an opportunity to really start making those selections and dialing in those details of the interior and exterior elements of the project. So in the next slide, you can see what that really means. So interior design, I mentioned it's really about people. It's about getting to know you and understanding you. Such an important aspect. Learning about your style preferences. What do you like? Are you somebody who gravitates towards cool colors or warm colors, creating a palette around you? And sometimes it's about something that inspires you. Sometimes people will say, hey, I found this amazing knob. It's made out of bronze. It just feels so good. It's this small thing, but that's how I want my whole project to feel. So something that inspires you. And then selecting products and finishes, including shopping trips. There's some things that are just so much easier to decide on when you're seeing it in its full scale, not in an image or in just a small sample. So I thought Miranda might be able to help me talk a little bit more about that, or actually she's probably better acquainted with all this and can take over a little bit from here.
Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, so like Jesse touched on, first and foremost for Becca and I, early stages, we want to get to know you. We want to get to know you, the client. Who lives in your household? Do you have children? Do you have parents that live at home? Are there pets? And how do you live in your spaces? We want to get to know, that's so crucial moving forward, of how we're going to navigate through this. And really, what are we sourcing? Is it going to be appropriate for how you live? We had a project where a client had a large dog. They knew early on they wanted hardwood floors throughout all of their common areas. But their biggest concern was, we want hardwood floors, but we don't want to worry about them being scratched and dented and having to put throw rugs everywhere, kind of defeating the purpose of having beautiful hardwood floors. So we knew early on we had to source not a softwood, something that was going to dent and scratch easily, but a hardwood that was going to hold up to their pup running around and toys being thrown about, and they could enjoy it. It was still going to be beautiful. So getting to know you, very important. And we like to take it a step further. We want to learn your style preferences. And what I mean by that, Jesse briefly talked about this, is that we want to get to know, what palettes are you drawn to? Do you gravitate towards warm hues or cool hues? Do you love reds, but you dislike blues? We want to get to know that, because when we start to shop and we start to source materials, we don't want to bring you something that you dislike. If I find out you dislike blues, I'm not bringing you anything with blue in it. We might have clients, so maybe you're sitting there telling me, Miranda, I can't verbalize to you what I like or dislike. I'm more visual. Okay, well, let's start to use some tools such as House Idea books or Pinterest boards, maybe magazine clippings. Let's sit down and let's start looking at visually some photos. Maybe there's a faucet you fall in love with, or a light fixture, something that you say and point to, I want to use this. I love this style. Okay, let's start to use that as we develop through this. Sometimes clients, maybe they can't do that. Maybe you're sitting there saying, you know what, I found a photo. I love it. I don't know why I love it. I can't tell you certain details in it, but I love it as a whole. I love how it feels. It feels relaxing, spa-like, or it feels playful. Even all of that, that's going to help us as we go through this journey. That's going to be what starts to dictate, okay, here's our foundation, and how do we start moving forward? One thing I want to touch on is Becca and I, we really don't want to force a personal opinion. We don't have an agenda. Say we're doing a powder bathroom. I'm not going to sit there and tell you, you have to do a black powder bathroom. No, we want to know your likes, your dislikes, what makes you feel comfortable. We will ensure that we give our professional opinion as we go through this journey, but we're not going to force something onto you. At the end of the day, we go home. That's your home. That's your intimate personal space. We want you to love your project. And when we leave, you can brag about it. You love it. That's what we want. That's our goal. So as we get that information and we really have a good foundation, we get into the little bit of the next phase, which is building your palettes and inspirations. And Becca, do you want to talk through this with us?
Yeah, so building palettes and inspirations is kind of the early phase of design. We take all these conversations and these inspirations that we have in building your preferences, and we try to put little inspiration boards or materials together to really hone in on details, to bring your vision together as a whole. You can see on this slide on the left, we have a board, and this client brought me this picture of this tile backsplash, and they love the colors, they love the tile. So we tried to create something that really gave them a feel of that photo, but made it their own. The line drawing above the tile backsplash is a custom tile, still very similar to the one below, but it's its own. And we can customize it with the colors. So it gives the client the feel of their inspiration photo, but it still is their own. It's their design, it's custom to what they like. And these inspiration and palettes really help a client visualize what their design might end up being. And these help us in the process when we start selecting materials and products, which Miranda can talk further on.
Yeah, so those early initial digital boards, or if we have a grouping of samples that we're putting in front of you, we're, again, just chipping away, just getting a little further down this process and making some headway, right? That's the goal. So when we get a little further into this, we have an idea, right? We now have scope of work. We have a list of items. We know, okay, we're doing tile on the walls. We need a faucet. We need a sink. This is where we use a tool, which we call our product selection worksheet. And essentially, if you think about it, it's basically a shopping list. It's a document that we put together, and it's going to have a list of all the items that you, the client, and us need to shop for. So it's going to have a faucet on there if we need one, if we need a mirror or sconces. And what we're going to do is we're going to populate our pricing. We have allowances that come from our total project cost that we use as basically our guidelines. And so when we shop or I start to show you materials, I'm going to start showing you pricing as well and how that relates to those allowances that we've set. And we can go a little over if we love, say you fall in love with a faucet. It goes a little over in price of what our allowance was. Okay, well, maybe we're saving in other areas. We want to be aware of this and we want to be conscious of that. And that's where we will populate actual costs as we go through this and we start selecting and approving. That way you can compare and you can see, okay, maybe we're a little over here, maybe we're right within, or maybe we're under. And that's our tool as we go through working drawings, that when we get to before construction, we hope that we have close to 100% of selections approved and finalized. As we start to pick those specific items, we are going to start to develop them into our line drawings, our elevations. And oftentimes we're going to use colored elevations like you see here on the screen, or sometimes we use 3D renderings to help you, the client, visualize a little better of now what we're selecting. So we've selected a certain faucet, we're drawing that in. We want to see the height of it. We want to see the reach of that spout with the size of your sink. We're now looking at cabinet hardware and we're starting to put that on our cabinets. And for this particular project, the tile was the focal point. This client found this tile's Matawi tile, and beautiful handmade tile. We wanted to ensure with this tile that with the layout, we didn't have cuts. So how we laid this out was to ensure that we did not have cut edges, because this tile has a pillowed effect to it and a little cushion like. Well, if we had a sharp cut, we're really interrupting the beauty of that. And we didn't want to do that. So we laid this out so that if we needed to adjust the sill of under our window, we did. And in fact, we ended up having to do that. There were these beautiful little rosette deco tiles. You see those darker squares that we did probably 4 different elevations where we had different locations of those. So the client could see, okay, how is this looking? Okay, no, let's tweak it. Let's move it over a little bit. And then if you'll notice, when we go to the finished photos, you can see there's no electrical outlets in that backsplash. Well, we did not want to interrupt that beauty of the tile. It's art, it's artwork, and we didn't want to interrupt that. So we ended up putting the outlets underneath the cabinets. All of these things, that's what we want to think through in working drawings. We want to make sure that we're figuring those details out and we're drawing it. We're using any type of visual tool that's going to help you visualize it, so that we're saying, okay, we're feeling really good about this moving into construction. We can get this ordered and we can move on to other things. One thing I want to touch on that we also, Becca and I, are really trying to be aware of are lead times. So for example, this tile, client immediately knew she wanted to use this type of tile. Well, this tile tends to have 8 to 10 week lead time, maybe longer. We want to make sure that we're aware of what those timeframes are. And that's why it's so important. And so it's nice that we do it early on, because we don't want to limit you. If we get into construction and now you've found something, we haven't even thought about it yet, and you find this tile, now that could be affecting our schedule. And now you may be saying, oh, I can't do what I love. So, okay, I don't want to affect schedule. I don't want to prolong things. I'm just going to settle on something else. We don't want to do that. That is something we want to avoid. So that's why that's very helpful on the tools that we have. One other thing I'd like to point out, this project in general, I could go on and on with stories because there's a lot of fun ones, but this one, for example, the tile. So when we were selecting the tile in this space, this was the client with the large dog. We had to make sure we were finding something modeled, the right colorway, not too dark, not too solid, because the dog hair, they didn't really want to see it. They knew it was going to be floating around. And so we did a dog hair test. We literally took clumps of the dog hair and we literally sprinkled it on all of the samples on the floor, collectively stood around and we're looking at it in different light. And that's how we got to this approach. And that's why we say, again, it's very important for us to learn the dynamics of the household. How are you using it? How are you living in it? You know, some clients don't want polished fixtures because they don't want to see water spots. Those are all things that we want to be aware of and thinking about through this. And Becca, you want to talk to us a little bit about shopping?
Yeah, so the shopping process is different with every client. Some clients want to be fully involved and go shopping with us. Others do not want to do that. And something one of our team members always says, and I think it's a good rule, is if it feels like work to you, we don't want you to do it. So we have really great relationships with our vendors. We have far reach. We go out to LA, we go into Orange County. Miranda and I are really passionate about keeping those relationships and creating new ones. We're constantly on the lookout for new vendors, new materials, what's new on the market. We like to make meetings with those reps and just, you know, keep up to date with everything. We're also very open to client suggestions. We've had quite a few clients that bring a material to us or have somewhere they like to shop, and we love that. Again, we like to create new relationships, so that's also very welcomed. Something great about our relationship with some of our vendors is it's a really good relationship, long-standing with a lot of them. So we have opportunities to do fully custom tile work and really make these things your own, one of a kind that no one else will have. So that's something really special that we're able to do with our relationships that we have. And part of the shopping process sometimes is our meetings. Each meeting we do layouts with different materials, and as we go through selections, we will lay out what we're selecting, and it really helps to see everything as a whole. It helps you visualize that room. You can see here, this is a layout of a bathroom that we did. And although it might not be exact to what it turned out, it really gives you a sense and a feel of what that bathroom became. And it also is great to see the materials next to each other and how they balance each other and harmonize, and you can touch and feel the textures, and really gives a client and gives you a great feel for what your room is going to look like.
And to go a little further on this tile, particularly this project and several others, like Becca said, you know, we have the ability to customize. Not only can we do it custom to your project, but there are resources and manufacturers that there's a lot of customization to what we're doing, in that, for example, this tile we can do in different colorways, and depending on how you do it, it definitely influences how the overall look is. And we will do color renderings. We will get custom samples made in those different colorways so that you can see the actual tile before we place the order. We want to get that tile in. So the one that you see on the right, that was used for the project on the left. And we got probably 10 different tile samples in different colorways. And we want to ensure that you see it. This is what it is. This is what is going to be in your space. We don't want to do any custom ordering and then it come in and you're thinking, that's not how I thought it was going to look. We want to try to eliminate that. That's the whole part of this process. You know, we get to construction, it starts getting installed, and then you can stand back and go, okay, yep, I'm loving this. This is how I envisioned it coming together.
A funny story, the other day I was at a weekly construction meeting, and the clients brought out this sample tile that I had colored a certain area with a Sharpie in one of our design development meetings, because we didn't have a particular sample that had this one area in black. And they said, we really want to see that in black. So I colored it with a Sharpie, and here it was in construction several months later, and they're using that and comparing it to the actual tile that's going up. So, you know, we're going to use whatever means we have necessary at that point. Sometimes we don't have every single sample that's imaginable, but we're going to get it to you some way or another, even if it means that I'm coloring in with a Sharpie on site.
To speak a little more to layouts, something we've learned during this time is adapting to the current situation and what's going on. And Miranda and I have come up with solutions for our clients and to make them feel comfortable. So, some clients, they don't want to meet in person. We're doing Zoom calls. So we'll package these materials up and make sure they have them. Sometimes we'll put a little photo of how we would lay them out so they can see them like how it is shown here, so that they can have this experience, but have it at their home, however they feel comfortable, and they still get this experience of a meeting and touching and feeling and getting these samples to them.
Yeah, the biggest thing to touch on is anyway, even away from the COVID situation, we want to do this process of what makes you your comfort level. How do you visualize things? How do you want to see things? We want to be, whether it's the renderings, the physical samples, us doing all the shopping, all of that. We either hand delivering materials to your doorstep or social distance outside meetings so that you want that interaction still. We've done boxes and just recently mailed samples across the country and had everything labeled and had the photos, and then they opened it up and it was all there. We're doing everything we can to make sure that we can get through this together and you're understanding, okay, yep, I'm visualizing this, I'm seeing this, I feel good about this moving forward. That's the goal. And so then interior design role during construction. The important thing we'd like to talk through again is how collaborative we are at HartmanBaldwin, in that you start getting team members early on. So as early on, you'll get a design build consultant such as Jesse, and you start coming down, you'll get an architect. And then there's one of Becca and I, an interior designer. And then when we get into construction, project manager. But what's important to discuss is how we're constantly communicating. So in construction, we finish design development, we don't go away. We're still tied to the project. We're still connected. And although we may not be at every construction weekly meeting, we're still touching in and we're going to those key meetings. So things that are still going on in construction are maybe we're picking grout colors. All the tile is in, we have, we're seeing the space develop. Now we're picking grout or paint colors. We're going to do for wall paint, it's not uncommon for us to do 8, 10 drawdowns, large drawdowns, to start honing in of the spaces, interior or exterior, in which you can move around the space at different times of the day, see it in different lighting. Outside, huge, different sides of the house, gloomy day, sunny day. We want any way to visualize and really keep chipping it away. And the process keeps evolving. It doesn't just stop. Even though we have the drawings detailed a certain way, it's not uncommon that in construction, things start to go in and maybe there's little details of a shelf and we're going, no, that's a little too deep. We need it to be a little shallower. Not a problem. Okay. Or the height of the location of something. Those are where we're going to do that in person. If we go to the next slide, we have a finished project. So we have here's a 3D rendering. And so we did this in design development. And there's little subtleties, right? We selected the tile and we went shopping for the slabs. We picked the faucets. So we did this 3D rendering so that we could put everything in and the client could visualize this and see how it was taking shape, right? And let's switch to the finished. Very, very subtle differences here. But when we were in construction, one of the biggest element of this space was the glazed cabinetry. So there's a custom antique glazed on this cabinetry. We probably did maybe 5 different samples on actual doors. So we get miniature door set of the style of your cabinet, and we're gonna do different samples on them. And with this process, it's a multi-step process. So there's a lot of layers of paint, there's different colors. And this one has a top glaze. So we were doing samples where it had a little lighter of a glaze color, a little darker, a little heavier in the crevices, a little lighter, and holding it up standing away from it, everyone collectively looking at it and going, that's the one. We want to do that before we paint all of these cabinets. Because it is such a complex process, we want to get it right before it's done. And we know you're going to love it. Same with the paint on the walls. But with this project, what was also fun is just down to the shelving. In the rendering, we had 3 shelves. And when we were in construction, we're holding them up and standing away from it. And it just felt too busy. It was almost competing with the hood to the right of it and overpowering the smaller window next to it. So when we go to the finished photo, you'll see that we eliminated one of the shelves. We ended up shortening the depth of that, and we added some decorative metal brackets. So just like little subtleties that we're still honing in, even though we're in construction. It's not a fine line of, nope, this is how you decided in design development and that's the end all. No, we're not at HartmanBaldwin. It's that evolution of the design process and honing in to the very, very end of getting the end result that you're ultimately happy with. That's our goal.
And it really is that team effort, and you're part of that team as our client. You're a key part of that team, because like Miranda said, you're going to be there when we all go home. So yeah, and really to me, that's what it's all about, right? Is ultimately we want to create these lasting relationships. Miranda, you want to tell a story about that?
Yeah, I do. So the project that actually all of these photos are at, we had one of our events there, and these clients, I have to say, of all of our clients, we have, I think, a really good bond and just overall really good experience. But this particular project, a year after the project, our clients reached out to us and said, you know what, we would love to invite the whole team to our house for a nice brunch, sit out on the deck. It was a beautiful day. We sat there and we just reminisced of the process and all the little details. And we had a story for everything: paint colors, the doors, the windows, all those little details. And also catching up with the family and their dynamics. We truly care about our clients. And when we're done, we still think about them. And if there are certain situations or events happening, we still like to reach out. These clients also too, just recently, we had the fires that were getting really near their house, and Becca, it was maybe 9 o'clock at night one night, and Becca sent me a text and she said, hey, has anybody checked on them? Are they okay? Is the family okay? Is the house okay? So, I'm sending a text to her and just saying, hey, we're thinking about you, let us know. Is there anything we can help with? Because, we truly do care about you. We care about that. That's what, at the end of the day, that's huge for me. That's why I love residential interior design. That's why I love being at HartmanBaldwin. It's the relationships we build. So I think, to sum it up, that's what it is for me.
And ultimately that shows in what we do. You can't fake that, right? It's not something that you can get to know through some kind of cursory understanding. It takes those meetings and it takes that depth, and then that comes through in the work we do. And sometimes it may sound a little OCD with the details that go into it, but when you stand back, if you saw that beautiful Matawi tile and it had plug here and plug there and they weren't lined up with the tile, you'd notice it. You don't notice when they're not there. We found a way to meet the code. It's actually underneath that sill. It's all very legal and proper, but we were able to maintain that beauty. And that's where that relationship comes in between not just you, the client, but also bringing construction and interior design and architecture together in this amazing kind of stew, So thanks so much, Miranda and Becca. That was very, very helpful. I want to spend just a couple minutes talking about some upcoming events that we have. I had mentioned that we're doing some webinar series, and one of the things that we do is highlight a particular project. So on November 19th, we're going to highlight this Robin Hill residence, which is a modern estate in the hills of La Cañada. Hope you can tune in to see that. It's what we call construction showcase, another way of describing a project that's finished. And now we just want to show kind of what we went through as a case study to get to where we were in the final analysis. So those are always fun. And then sometimes, you know, at the end of this, you may decide, hey, I'd like to, you know, have one of us, myself or one of my colleagues, come over and talk a little bit more about your particular project, and we can do that. That's what we call a design consultation. So you would want to schedule that online or call to schedule that. And then I did promise we'd have some, oh, and one more thing, very importantly, stay connected with us. You know, we have all the social media platforms we are available on and have a presence on, and I think that's a good way to stay connected in these times when it's a little bit more difficult to connect physically. So please follow us there. And finally, I promised we'd have some time to do some question and answer. So I was wondering if there's some questions that came up that we might address. They might be for Miranda or for Becca or for me.
Yeah. Hi, Jesse. Hi, Miranda. Hi, Becca. Great presentation. We did get a couple of questions tonight. The first one, you kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of the consultation, but in general, how does the process begin? You mentioned the consultation and then conceptual design, and there's someone who just wants to know a little bit more about where do they begin?
Well, I can answer that. So one of the first steps is a lot of times people will learn more about us and they say, hey, I'd like to, you know, maybe meet in person, invite you over to my house to learn a little bit more about my project. And we're happy to do that if you're in our area. We work all along the foothills, and as Miranda said, we're also in Orange County and in Los Angeles. But if you're in an area where we work, we'd love to come out and meet with you and talk a little bit more about your project and have you get to know us better. So that's something that you can schedule. And there's no real commitment at that point. It's really just, you know, we're having a conversation. So that's something we could do.
Yeah. The follow-up to that was, is there a minimum size project that we take on here at Hartman-Baldwin?
So that's a good question too. So is there a minimum size project? I don't like to think in terms of a minimum in terms of a dollar amount, because that's very subjective. But what I would say to answer that is if there's a project that requires the kind of knowledge and expertise we bring to the table, that's where we're really going to be the best fit. So, you know, some people will call and they'll say, hey, I'm just replacing my floor and need a new water heater. And that's probably not a great fit for Hartman-Baldwin. You know, if it's something where it's like, hey, we're moving some walls and we're changing things around and we're really gonna make an impact on this space, then because we bring a lot to the table, and that's where we're really at our best. And of course, then the interior design aspect, when we get to that point in the process, it becomes a really important key and critical part of a successful project. You know, bringing all those elements together in a way that's really makes these spaces sing.
Miranda, there's a question directed for both you and Becca. Somebody wants to know, where do you get your inspiration?
Becca, do you want to start?
Yeah. You know what? I feel like it can't be limited. Inspiration can come from so many places. It can be as simple as a magazine, or it can be nature. I think I find inspiration everywhere. Textures, colors, you know, something can ignite something in you, just a color, and it'll give you inspiration. I really think it's not limited.
I would agree with that. But with me, my biggest thing is my inspiration starts if I'm on a certain project with the clients. And then once I gather that information, it's the shopping and me just being immersed and surrounded by different materials, whether it be different styles or what have you. And so that's how I start to evolve and draw inspiration. And like Becca said, I'm constantly on different design websites, or whether it's social media of what's trending, or, you know, what is more of a classic look and how are they giving it a fresh approach. All of that. I think that's where I get my inspiration.
Yeah, I also think, our clients are inspiration too, because we're not limited to a certain style of design. And so our clients come to us and it's all different styles of homes. So that's always an inspiration too, is like we get to work on so many different unique styles of homes that's always brings inspiration in.
Yeah, that's a great point, which actually leads us to this next question, kind of dovetails to what you guys were just talking about. Kristen asked, how do you go about figuring out how to be both in sync with the style of an older house, and for her, it's a 70s era home, and keep the best of it, but also modernize the style without fighting those original elements? I know you guys get that question a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is we don't want to stray too far away from the architecture of the home. We want to have a nice flow to that from when you enter the space. But there are ways, oftentimes we have clients who, they have a home that would have been surface mount lights and they want recessed lighting in. Well, that's not a bad thing to do. That is something we can do in spaces. We want to really get to know what you want out of the space and what you want to achieve, and try to not stray too far away from that. I mean, we don't want to go inside your home and now it be country French or, rustic. We want to keep the integrity the best that we can and navigate through that. We can mix and match a little bit and give it an updated, fresh feel and something that you're going to be comfortable with.
I want to add two things to that. One is I always think of the architecture of the home or the home itself as another voice in the whole conversation. We need to listen to the home as well. And I don't mean in like a Shirley MacLaine kind of way, in a very real sense, like understanding the architecture and the space and the elements. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that if we're doing all that and we're really bringing things together in a way that's paying attention to the architecture and understanding current trends, but not being a slave to them, there's no such thing as 100% timeless, but you can create something that lasts and has a great lasting value. And something that I just heard today that I thought was amazing that illustrates that is one of my friends told me that they were talking to somebody and they said, hey, here's what we want our kitchen to look like. And they brought out a picture of a kitchen that we designed in the 1990s. And I thought that was just so amazing. True story. They didn't know it was our kitchen. And he said, oh my gosh, that's HartmanBaldwin. I have to tell Jesse about this, but here's a kitchen that was designed more than 30 years ago. It's still holding up. It's looking good. Not only is it holding up physically, but it still looks good. That's a testament to quality design as far as I'm concerned.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's it for all of the questions, but I have a question for Miranda and Becca because I get this question a lot too. And I'm curious about your suggestion. If you could pick one platform out there that's good for collecting your ideas, do you have a favorite?
House.
Yep.
They're user friendly. You can create an idea book. What's also really nice about House is it's pretty current in that oftentimes I find that if I go on Pinterest and there are things that maybe a client likes, it's no longer available or you can't source it. House just seems to be very user friendly. It has a lot of information on there. I mean, you just type in certain keywords and you have, tons of imagery to look at. I think very, very useful tool.
I completely agree.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. That's all the questions we have for this evening.
Well, thank you so much, Carla, and thank you, Becca and Miranda. And thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I hope it made you want to learn more and learn more about us, but learn more about how to have a successful project, because ultimately that's the most important thing to all of us, that whether we work together or not, that you end up with tools that create a successful project for you. So if you are interested in hearing more about us, please check our YouTube channel. You can go to our website and find out what that is, or look for us on other social media platforms, and stay in touch. Thank you again so much for joining us tonight. We're looking forward to learning more about you.